I've always been fascinated by etymology, the study of the origin of words. In fact, this fascination was in part fueled by an interaction I had with someone in this room. Sharian Abdul Rahman and I went to college together. While we were at Penn, we were both involved in certain initiatives to bring the Jewish and Muslim communities, she's the Muslim, I'm the Jew, if you can tell, together. One such initiative was a trip that we took to New Orleans for 25 Jewish and Muslim students. We were going to go down there for spring break. We were going to rebuild homes, sing Kumbaya, and solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict all in a week. It was very exciting. It was a foolproof plan. It was Jews and Muslims gone wild in NOLA. Now, we're about to leave from Philadelphia International Airport. We're actually on the plane, and I noticed that Sherry is sitting next to a Jewish girl named Malka. Now, I knew this was going to be very interesting because Malka comes from a rather Zionist, right-wing Jewish background, and Sharihan is Palestinian, and you know, I figured this was going to get exciting. So I start eavesdropping on their conversation, and I hear Malka say to Sharihan, "Where are you from?" Sharihan responds, "I'm from Abu Ghosh in Palestine. We're famous for our hummus." Now Malka doesn't hear hummus; she hears Hamas. And so Malka says, "You're famous for your Hamas? It's disgusting. It's terrible. How could you be famous for your Hamas?" Sharihan is livid that an American Jew is going to tell her that her hummus is disgusting, is terrible. Now this goes on for about 2 minutes until I decide to interject and tell them that one's talking about a chickpea dish, the other one about an Islamist organization. But you get the point. Now, I don't tell this story to suggest that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict can be solved by hummus. But I do tell it to suggest that bonding over hummus is perhaps not a bad place to start. My interest in etymology actually led me to found an organization, lendforpeace.org. The origin of the word credit, as in credit or loan, comes from the Latin word creditas or credere, which means to trust in, to believe, or to confide. This is natural. You're only going to give a loan to someone if you believe in them, if you trust in them, or you confide in them. Social science research on this point suggests that people are way more willing to give loans to people based on soft indicators of trust, things that are seemingly insignificant when you're thinking about giving a loan, like if I recognize your last name or I know something insignificant about you. This increases the level of trust. Now, credit must be differentiated from the notion of capital, something we use interchangeably in the English language. Capital comes from the Latin word capitalis, which means of the head. So hence, capital punishment, off your head, or in my case, a skull cap, which you put on your head. Now, interestingly, so differentiating credit from capital is an important distinction. Capital has this sinister connotation. If you don't pay back your loan, right, off with your head. I knew that my interest was in increasing credit, not capital, increasing trust, not capital. I also knew that as an American Jew, that I had always been fascinated by the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You know, you sort of grow up in this conflict. You hear about it at your Shabbat dinner table or at your camp or wherever your sort of socialization comes from as a diaspora Jew or Palestinian. It's a very present part of your upbringing. But I had this feeling, and I think it was shared by many of my Jewish and Palestinian friends in the diaspora, that too many Jews and Arabs or Palestinians in the diaspora were spending too much time sort of shouting slogans or joining Facebook groups, but not actually doing anything constructive or positive or making any sort of constructive imprint on this conflict. My goal was to actually do something constructive, be positive. I think it's partially because we have this guilt that we're not there, right? If you're an American Jew, you know, you're not in State Road with rockets falling on you. If you're an American Palestinian, you're not going through checkpoints. So this guilt of not being there in some ways reinforces an inability to not see the gray area, to see things in certain black and white terms. And because of that, you don't actually feel like you can see beyond sort of the petty differences and actually do something constructive. So I joined forces with two Palestinian friends and one Jewish friend, got to keep the symmetry, 2 and 2, to found lendforpeace.org, which is a website where individuals anywhere can lend to entrepreneurs in the West Bank. This is our sort of splash page. And the idea is that you take a Jewish real estate broker in California named John Friedman, and he could join forces with a Muslim grad student named Samer Malik in Georgia, and they could give a loan to Rabia al-Mahatana, who is a seamstress in Ramallah. By increasing credit, we were increasing credit, or trust, right? So that difference between trust and capital. Now, importantly, in order to increase credit or trust, you have to think about what the actual essence of trust is. Trust is about reciprocity, that if I do something, I act in a certain way, someone else is going to respond in that same way. Now, trust breaks down when there's a breach of reciprocity, right? So anyone who studied game theory or the prisoner's dilemma will tell you that trust breaks down when one person doesn't think the other person is going to cooperate. It's actually rational or it's irrational to cooperate if you think the other person is not going to cooperate. In some ways, you could break down the entire history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as a breach of reciprocity or trust. Each side's narrative will suggest that they gave all these sacrifices, only to see that the other side didn't make similar sacrifices. So our goal was to increase trust, and by doing this, to actually increase the credit around us. Now, we've launched this about 2 years ago, and we've raised tens of thousands in loans, but I'm here today to actually think about where this platform can be expanded. We're here at AMENDS, and we're thinking more broadly about the Arab world and Arab civil society. And I want to think about how a platform like this can actually be used or applied to the post-Arab Spring Middle East. So you're part of the 30% of the population between the ages of 15 and 29 in the Middle East. And you have your own government now, perhaps. You have you voted in an election. You may even have some free speech, depending where you're from. But how many of you, of the Arab youth, have jobs? I'll answer that. About 1 in 4 of you do not. So a significant portion of the population, a very vibrant portion of the population, do not have jobs. Interestingly, a high literacy rate in a lot of countries, including the West Bank, but not jobs. And so our goal is to think more broadly about how can these individuals be sort of incorporated into the economic structures and their systems. Entrepreneurship is where we think that can happen. So enter entrepreneurship, the idea that anyone, anywhere can start a business. But to start a business, you need money, funding, or credit, as we say, right? Now, the problem is that there are many reasons why a bank won't give a young entrepreneur credit, right? Many of us in this room personally can attest to being irresponsible with capital as young people. We don't have collateral. We don't have a history. There are many reasons why a bank would not lend to you. But I would. Why? Because I'm an Orthodox Jew from Brooklyn. No, that's not the answer why. I would because I believe in lowest common denominators. Lowest common denominators like credit and like the human right to control your economic destiny. I believe that if we work together, as we are here at AMENDS, we can achieve things that are much greater than the sum of our individual parts. I believe that giving individuals the opportunity to chase their dreams, by giving them funding to chase those dreams, is a social good, and a social good that we can all agree upon, whether we're Israeli, Palestinian, or Californian. The Arab Spring taught us the power, or demonstrated the power, of grassroots political organizing. I hope to demonstrate the power of grassroots, crowdsourced fundraising. Now, our goal, and all of our goals, all of our responsibility, should be to think about this, to think about the difference between credit and capital, to increase the amount of credit around us and decrease the amount of capital, to increase the humus and decrease the, well, I won't finish that sentence. Thank you.